Hi, welcome to tonight's video. It's just a review about linear inequalities and systems of linear equalities. I know that many of you have done these before in the past, but I just want to do a very simple explanation and hopefully you remember to take graph paper home. So, if Mrs. Rose starts with this, y, and then negative 2x plus 1, one of the first things I realize is that this is in slope-intercept form. And so that I go ahead and I think about this, and what Mrs. Rose does is she says the intercept is at 1, correct? And so Mrs. Rose is going to take a black dot and she's going to put it at the 1. And then the slope, of course, is negative 2. So Mrs. Rose is going to go down 2 and over 1 and down 2 and over 1. And then she can also go just like this, okay? And when she does that, she's going to take this black line and everything that is on the black line from infinity and beyond, you know, kind of like Buzz Lightyear, that is a solution to that, okay? Now, let's take the fat, hairy finger of fate, okay? And let's see, let's go ahead and get some nail polish on this today. Let's get some funky looking nail polish like this. And this is my fat finger of fate. And a lot of times what Mrs. Rose does is she uses this to determine things that are above and below the solution set. So at this point, I put my fat finger of fate on the positive 1. And when I move my finger up the y-axis, everything that I have touching the fat finger of fate is those things that are greater than, okay? So Mrs. Rose is going to use a green, and she's going to say that green is greater than. And so the highlighter is a little bit easier to use. So everything from infinity and beyond on this half plane, okay, is greater than that equation of y is equal to negative 2x plus 1. Now let's take that old fat finger of fate again and put it here. And let's go ahead and where are the numbers that are below positive 1? Well, all of these are below that solution set line. And so let's go ahead and use yellow for that. And those are all of the things that are less than that solution set, which is the line. And let's go ahead and use a yellow highlighter for that. Okay? So that's just a kind of way to determine how to shade. And so let's take a look at this one. What if Mrs. Rose says, you know what? I want you to do several of these. I want you to start at positive 1. And I want you to use a slope of 1/2. Well, a slope of 1/2 is go up 1 and over 2, or go down 1 and back 2. But notice that this says less than, and so instead of using a solid line, Mrs. Rose, of course, will use a dashed line, and she'll go ahead and do this. And then what she's going to do is very lightly, with my little fat finger of fate, I'm going to use the crayons, and I'm just going to say that everything below here, just shading it ever so slightly, is less than right there. Now, let's take a look at this other one. Let's take my black pen again. And this is at negative 1, and the slope right here is negative 2. So at, oops, Miss Rose made a mistake. Let's fix that again. Sorry about that. Let's go to negative 1. There we are. And Mrs. Rose is going to use a slope of, that's right, down 2 and over 1. So down 2 and over 1, or up 2 and back 1, up 2 and back 1. So again, because it is not equal to, Mrs. Rose is going to use a dashed line, and she is just going to connect these like this. Then her fat finger of fate, but in this time she's going to use a fat crayon of fate with a different color. Let's use purple. And everything above here gets shaded in purple. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, do you happen to notice the area where you have both purple and brown? Oh, yes, you do, Mrs. Rose. You have purple and brown right in here. You have it here and you have it here, and you have it to infinity and beyond, okay? Now remember, coloring in with Smartboard is not very easy, but this is your solution set. Every single point that you see in the green that has a boundary of this ray from here to here, and from this ray from here to here, is part of the solution set. Notice because the dashed lines are not part of the solution set, they are just a boundary or a constraint. All right, Mrs. Rose, so let's see if we can graph this inequality. Oh, but Mrs. Rose, this one's in standard form. Well, let's make it a little bit simpler. Let's go ahead and subtract 5x from both sides. And that would give us 3y is less than negative 5x, positive 15. Divide everything by 3. And Miss Rose usually does every one of the quantities by 3, but you don't have to. Y is less than negative 5/3 x plus 5. And so Miss Rose goes up to the 5, and there's her little mark. And then her slope is negative 5/3. And so she goes negative 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. And then she does it again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. And because it's not equal to, she goes ahead and makes a dashed line. And of course, that's a horrible line, but you know what? The nice thing about SMART is you can do this and fix it. And then I take my fat finger of fate, but in this case, it's not going to be a fat finger of fate. It's going to be a crayon of fate. And I put it right here and I say, where are all the values that are less than 5? Oh, Mrs. Rose, this is where they are. They're all right here. And so my solution set, even though I can't color this forever and a day because it'll take too long, but for this half plane to infinity and beyond, outside of the constraint of that boundary line, okay, is part of the solution set. That means any point that Mrs. Rose should happen to pick would make that statement true. But of course, Miss Rose isn't going to sit here and do this like measles. That's why she uses the shading tool. Okay, go ahead and stop the video and see if you can do this one for me. Okay? All right, welcome back. Let's see if you did this. Mrs. Rose would add 12x to both sides, 12 to both sides, and she would get 3y is less than negative 4x, positive 12. Divide everything by 3. I would get y is less than negative 4/3 x plus 4, and remember that's my slope. I go to 4, the intercept, down 4 over 3, down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3. There I am right there. Sorry about that, a little sloppy. Of course, I pick a dashed line. Why do I pick a dashed line? Because it doesn't say or equal to, Mrs. Rose. That's right. Then I take my crayon of fate and I say, let's make this one purple, less than. Here are all the values less than 4 on the number line. And so, of course, if I had more shading, we'd continue on and on and on to infinity and beyond, but Mrs. Rose doesn't have time for infinity and beyond. Oh, Mrs. Rose, but what about this one? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a system of inequalities. You have to do both, and you have to make sure that you lightly shade it. So if you want to stop the tape, you can go ahead and stop the tape and then see if we get the same answers. But Mrs. Rose is just going to keep going like the Energizer Bunny that she is. Okay, positive 4 over 3, positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Why does Mrs. Rose do 3 points? Well, the reason is this, because any 2 points make a line, but to be real honest with you, if you don't do 3 points, how do you know for a fact that you're right? Because any 2 points can make a line. So Miss Rose does this, and then she just takes a very light color, and she goes ahead and says, this is all the things that are greater. So this is the half plane. So I kind of make all these little marks right here. Oh, but you know what? Mrs. Rose wants to check and make sure she gets this right. This is standard form. So she tends to like to take standard form things and put them into, that's right, slope-intercept form. And this is plus 24. And of course, she's going to divide everything by 6. She's going to get y is less than or equal to negative 1/3 x plus 4. So she goes ahead and goes to the 4. And she goes down 1 and over 3 and down 1 and over 3. But oh, look, my friends, it says or equals 2. So since it says or equals 2, I'm going to take a line, but this time it has to be a solid line. And I go ahead and where X marks the spot with a dot and a dot and a dash and a dash and a big question mark. If you've never heard that before, go ahead and ask your parents, or probably at my age, probably your grandparents, and they'll be able to tell you the rest of that silly saying. Okay, so now that Mrs. Rose has this, and she's going to move this one out of the way, she looks and it says less than, okay, less than, so she goes here. She starts making the marks, and look, this part right here is kind of silly, but look right here. Notice where I have both brown and purple. This is a constraint line. This is a boundary, so I really don't want to go past that. So if I want to take a deeper color, which I do, my solution set is anything that is in this area to infinity and beyond. And also, here's another hint. It also includes this boundary line right here because the boundary line is solid, but it does not include this boundary line. Why doesn't it? Because that one's dashed. All right. Oh my goodness, look at this one. Mrs. Rose, have you gone absolutely crazy? Well, of course she has. Y is greater than negative 3. Oh, thank goodness. That's a horizontal line, right? So Miss Rose is just going to take her little crayon and she's going to do this. Not a whole lot. Then she's going to say, oh, y is less than 5. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it less than 5, okay? And then what's kind of nice about this is I can use the same color crayon because, ladies and gentlemen, take a look. Less than just goes right here. I now have a north and south boundary, okay, kind of like 12 Mile and 13 Mile in Detroit. Solid line, greater than negative 6, so it's a solid line. My numbers that are greater than actually go here, and I'm going to use a little bit of red. Notice I'm not crossing the boundaries of north and south. Oh, but wait a minute, less than 2. Okay, so here it is. And where are the values that are less than 2? Oh, Mrs. Rose, I see them, so just go ahead and use the highlighter, Mrs. Rose. This is my feasible region. This is where all of my solutions lie. All of my solutions lie in this little rectangle. Why did I say rectangle? Because this form 90 degrees. But remember that it also includes the solid line that's there and the solid line that's here, but does not include this line. Do you remember why? Hopefully you can tell me in class tomorrow. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you this one. I'm not going to solve this one. I want you to solve this one, so pause the tape. And then here is how to do inequality graphs. Purplemath.com is really great, or mathwarehouse.com. This is another one that will help you. Toodles, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was a great help today. We'll talk about fat fingers of fate and funny looking crayons tomorrow. But you know what? Have a great green and gold night. And someone who asked me a question, I hope you made it to lacrosse practice today. Bye-bye.